right? Now, what's amazing about Marx is that today we say he's wrong, right? Communism happened in the Soviet Union, it happened in China, but it didn't happen in Europe and in the United States, where Marx said it would happen first because Germany was more industrialized than Russia or China, okay? Does that make sense? That's what we say. If you think about it deeply, okay, Marx was right. After World War II, every society, every industrial society, to some extent, adopted the ideals of communism. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, we call this socialism and not communism, but basically it adhered to the thinking of Marx, which is to make the worker the heart and center of your society. And why did they do that after World War II? Exactly, okay? Because workers create value. Okay? Money doesn't create any value. Money just creates more money. It's speculative. But the workers create value. They're productive. And therefore, you have to treat your workers properly. So in America and in Europe, workers became the heart and center of your society. And the workers, through unions, could demand political reforms. And so our society was geared towards making the lives of the middle class, the working class, better, okay? That's why you had excellent healthcare, great public schools, cheap universities. Okay? So the 50s and 60s and 70s was basically the peak of society for the working class. But in the 80s, we start to change this. Why? Why would we want to change the system? It's a great system, right? Marx is right. Having the worker as the heart and center of your society, as the central organizing unit of your society, makes a lot more sense than having money as the heart and center, okay? But starting in the 80s, we start to go back to money. Why? Excuse me?
Like they have the production necessary for society, so they want more. Like,
who wants more? Yes, exactly. Okay. So what happened in the 80s is something called the revolt of the elite. Okay? In other words, the problem with having a society based on the worker is it becomes too egalitarian, too equal, right? But if you're like the elite, you don't want equality, you want difference. You want to have power and money in your hands. Does that make sense? So the revolt of the elite happened in the 80s, and this is what we call in the United States the Reagan Revolution, okay? The Reagan Revolution. The beginning of neoliberalism, free market capitalism. And in Britain, it was called Thatcherism, okay? Margaret Thatcher, the Thatcher Revolution. And so now you need to transition away from the worker to something else, okay? Another ideology that allows the elite to amass power, okay? So just to show you how radical this revolution was. In the 1970s, okay, in the 1970s, if you were a CEO, the head of a company, okay, you were making on average $1 million a year. That's pretty good, right? That's really good money. And that $1 million was more than 20 times the worker. Okay? And that's pretty reasonable. Today, the average CEO in the United States makes $20 million a year. And that is 200 to 300 times more than the average worker in the company. Okay, does that make sense? So in the 80s, inequality started to explode, right? And so they were transitioning from the worker to a new organizing unit called the consumer. Okay? So they needed to destroy the working class, the middle class. And the way they did it was by introducing a new concept called the consumer, okay? So in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the government promised you a good job. If you were a member of a society, if you were a citizen, I promise you a good job that you would have for the rest of your life, okay? So in the 80s, the government said, I promise you that you have low prices and a wide selection of goods. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so this sounds like a subtle shift going from the worker to the consumer, okay? But what
Welcome back to Breakdown Friday. I felt that was a good place to stop. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Jones. We are here breaking down this video by this gentleman, this professor, and his overall premise or his end point is consumerism is the perfection of slavery. And so when I saw it, I thought it was interesting. I thought it'd be an interesting conversation, but it's something I've never thought about before. Like, what is the apex of slavery? And I think that may be a better term to use than the perfection, like the apex or the, you know, the I guess the greatest manifestation of slavery that can happen. But his premise, and he's going to get to it, but we're just setting up how he's getting to it. He's laying down his foundation. Is consumerism is the perfection of slavery. And of course, you know, we want to dig deep into that and give our ideas on that. But if so, then how does that affect us? How does being able to shift the consciousness of a society actually negatively or positively affect Black Americans, and especially around this time in the 80s? But just period, if a whole national consciousness can be shaped and shifted, what does that mean for the oppressed group of people who are also a part of this consumer group now? And so, you know, I got it's a whole lot of questions and thoughts and stuff that are running through my head as I watch this. I've watched this about 4 times now, but I thought it would be a good conversation that I want to bring to us and to you all in the comments as well. So make sure you drop your comments, give us your thoughts, hit that like button too, share, subscribe to this channel. Make sure you do that. Joe Biden told me to tell you, and all the white people that you don't like told me to tell you that if you don't subscribe to this YouTube channel, you don't support the channel, you don't like Black people. So make sure you do that. All right, comment, subscribe, like, and share. All right, so I want to kind of, you know, give some opening thoughts from us about what he said thus far, and then we're gonna get back into it, because the crux of what he's getting into is in the second half of this. So I kind of do want to let him speak, but I do want us to kind of give our thoughts on what has been said so far, because as of right now, he's basically talking about how the American society before the 1980s was a worker-based society where the worker was the center of the society and everything revolved around the worker, the ideologies, and that caused, and his premise was that bred more equality. And I saw Pat head on that. He tipped his head when he said that. But he's like the worker-based society bred more equality. So of course, if he's talking about a consumer-based society, he's talking about the consumer-based society breeding more individualism. So Pat, you had the head tip, man. I'm coming to you first. What are your thoughts on what he's saying so far, and, you know, explain your head tip?
Well, my head tilt was when he said in the 80s inequality exploded. That was an interesting statement. Given
like any inequality exploded in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
like,
just a real
like,
yeah, like I just thought that was a real, and so he's positioning an argument, I think, from the perspective of an outsider.
Of course.
And so, like, I expect his view to be different because he's an outsider looking, he's studying it, and I'm not calling him ignorant. I'm just saying he's like the values and things that he might be bringing to this aren't necessarily those of the people that are in it.
Right.
So there could be a negative slant there just from the standpoint of, and see, now we in this politically correct world. I gotta watch what I say, where I can't say a negative slant because we talking about an Asian dude. But anyways, there could be a negative way of looking at it because he's looking at it from the standpoint of we shifted from being a culture that where everybody kind of needed everybody and the collective was more significant to one that was more maybe ruggedly individual and where the individual was more important, which again, like, and this could be me reading into that coming from somebody that appears to be of Asian heritage, and a lot of Asian nations have collectivist cultures that they're very proud of. It would make sense that he would look at this shift and say, like, nah, that's crazy. Like, you shouldn't. But I'm be honest, I'm trying to give him a chance to get where he's going, but I don't agree with too much of nothing he's saying.
Yo, that's why we here.
I don't like his idea of money doesn't create value. Money creates money. Like, well, yes, money is a tool. And you can't just talk about value without defining value, because a worker doing work during labor that nobody cares about is also not creating any value.
Right.
Nobody cares.
It has to be something that people actually value, a position.
Right. So yeah, so you can't say, look, if all of society values money, then money becomes valuable. And so having money allows you to create value with that money because you have the thing that everybody values. Now, we can have a conversation about whether or not that is beneficial. I think that's a great conversation, but words have meanings. So I think I kind of get where he's trying to go, but I also don't want to make no assumptions. I want to let him get there. Do I think that things were better in a time period where people had to depend on each other to survive? Yes, I do. I am one of those people. I think things are better when you have to defend. And this is coming from somebody that don't really like depending on other people, not in large quantities. I got my small group and I rock with them, but everybody else, I don't. Yeah. So, but I can acknowledge the benefit to having a society set up where the people in that society, the individuals in that society, need to coexist and move as a collective in order to survive. There's a lot of value and benefit to that. But this whole assumption, that this notion, like he's almost painting this picture that the world prior to the 1980s was just sunshine and roses, and we was all frolicking in fields, holding hands and tongue kissing trees and flying with butterflies and stuff. And it's like I don't know about the 1960s and 70s and 50s and 40s and 20s and going all the way back that you read about, but the versions of America in those time periods that I read about, I don't necessarily want to go back and experience all of those things.
Yeah.
So that was the head tilt in a nutshell. Like okay.
Because like I said, I've watched this like 4 times. So his overall point and the way he explained his overall point, I agree with some of those in that, as far as like what consumerism can breed and the ideologies behind it and who pushes the consumerism. Like I agree, because, and we're gonna get to that, but that's why that's why when I saw this and I watched it, I was like, I think this would be a good breakdown, because it's a good critical thinking piece for us to really flex our muscles and really think about what he's saying and see how it really applies to real life in America, and especially for us Black people in America. PC, what say you, man?
Well, hold on. I got a question, and for both of you. So, in the vein of me being me, when we say consumerism, when we say being a consumer, like can we define that? What do we mean when we say consumerism?
Basically, from what I got from watching this video, he's going to the buyers, the people who are consistently spending money to buy status and a place in life and fulfillment and all those things to make themselves feel better through the purchasing of certain things and getting a certain amount of money. So yeah. Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, that's what Joe said, because I ain't see this shit yet.
Yeah. What say you so thus far on what he's been saying so far?
Well, I agree with Pat that it's definitely coming from an outsider's point of view. It's like American teachers or Western scholars went to the Far East and decided to deliver this slanted form of history, is white supremacist painted form of history, and which glorified all their so-called victories, but was very careful about how it identified their atrocities in terms of their treatment of people, especially us. So I think that was skewed, and I think there's also, I mean, I would really have to see where he lands this point he was about to make before I get into that part. But just based on what he said, the concept of America being more focused on the middle class wasn't done so out of design. It was done so out of necessity, because you had the boomer generation, for which, had come back from World War II and had created this mass population boom. And therefore, they had to create programs in the government in order to satisfy this population boom so the country wouldn't go into anarchy after World War II. So they created jobs such as men just cutting down trees in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And this is specifically for white men, right? Because they didn't do shit for black people. They created programs that gave them low interest or zero interest loans, and so forth, so they could build that the whole concept of a house with 2.3 children, a wife and a dog, and a white picket fence was built off of that. So that was out of necessity. That wasn't television shows like Leave It to Beaver and things of that nature. That was all the concept of they needed to do that in order to preserve that image, but in order to maintain control in this country. Now, what you had is in the 70s, a mass exodus of the factory jobs that were prevalent in the black communities, which helped establish the black middle class. All those were exported overseas to different countries, to different parts of the world. And therefore, this whole concept he has about consumerism was based on the fact that since the labor costs are cheaper in other countries, third world countries or developing countries, that the product you get here in America would be cheaper. And so to say people may have bought into that concept, I can see that. But I'm glad he brought up the Reagan era, because I definitely was going to bring up Reaganomics.
Well, yeah, because that's important.
So I don't believe it was neoliberalism. I think it was neoconservatism, conservatism, and neocolonialism that actually led to this change in terms of society in regards to reestablishing the order of wealth.
Right. Right.
So
and that's what Reaganomics was about in America.
Right, because while that's happening, we're not talking about how they figured out very, very interesting ways to feed this economy. You create the petrodollar, based on the the oil embargo that took place in the 70s, the late 70s. You created all sorts of and like I said, neocolonialism going into different parts of the world, such as Africa, South America, mostly, and in parts of Asia, because that's what the whole Vietnam War was about. And utilizing the resources that you got from those places and cheap labor. And let's not forget the creation of Taiwan, which added to that because now you had access to it. So I think that when you create, and I was having this conversation with a student not too long ago, when a concept is so vast and the concept is sophisticated, a lot of times we try to simplify the concept so we can digest it in bite-sized chunks that we can handle.
But
And I
it's,
think
yeah,
he
it's not.
overly simplified a very sophisticated thing that took place in the economy in order to get to his point, which I believe he's going to talk about how he created consumerism, and
Well,
consumerism
yes.
is the thing that keeps us in slavery. But
Yeah.
if you want to talk about the concept of creating this consumer and consumerism, well, that started way back in the 1920s, the Roaring '20s.
Well, and that's
Go ahead, Pat. Oh, good.
No, that's where I was like, I need to see where he's going. Because I'm like, we talking about industrial revolution. If we talking about consumerism, and like PC said, that's
Well,
the early 1900s, late 1800s. And then if you're talking about consumerism as a global phenomenon, well, now you're going back to the 1700s.
Yeah.
So, because in Europe, they had an industrial revolution. Yeah. So it's like, but for him, it all started in the 1980s.
Because if we switch up the language and call it what it is, then you go back to the same language that people use to identify the French Revolution, which is kind of some of the things he's talking about in the bourgeoisie, the merchant class, and the elites. You know,
and I would attribute that to the black bourgeoisie and the boule as well. The black people who use the consumerism to separate themselves as well.
Oh, that goes well. See, ours started a little later.
Right. But it's intertwined into this. But
yeah,
I don't, and I wanna let them talk before I say what I want to say. But I don't fully agree that consumerism is the perfection of slavery, because I believe that there has to be a mindset in place first.
Well, hold on, so no spoilers. Let you know. I want to
let go. Y'all hit that like button.
It's right.
This
Like this
was a revolution in society, a revolution in politics. So remember that an example of the worker has to have political consciousness in order to protect his or her rights, in order to organize and unify and push for favorable political reforms, okay? That's what the worker must do, okay? But now let's think about the mentality of the consumer. And to do this, let's do another thought experiment. And the thought experiment is this. Everyone in the school, about 500 people, I decide to give everyone $1 million US.
All right, this way you get started.
So everyone in the school has exactly $1 million US to spend. What happens now? Think about this. What happens now? Use your imagination. What happens? What's the first thing you do? What's the first thing you do?
Is he actually in the classroom, or is he cosplaying?
Nah, he's actually in the classroom, and I want to know what year this is because Buddy got a whiteboard. I ain't seen a whiteboard in a minute.
Well,
I got
we didn't. Yeah, I was going to say we got whiteboards, but
yeah.
What the funny part about stuff like this is when you do this in a classroom, students start trying to figure out what you want from them so they can give it to you.
Instead of being able to actually really think critically about it. Yeah.
All right.
Well, the first thing you do is buy something, right? What do you want to buy? $1 million is a lot of money. What do you want to buy now? You buy a house, right? That's great. That's a great purchase. Then what do you do? Okay, First thing is now buys a house. Then what does he do? Excuse me? Buy furniture. Then what does he do? There's something that he must do that's very important. What does he buy the house? What does he want to do? He wants to take pictures and post on social media, right? So everyone sees it on social media.
So, but let him get to it. Let him get to it.
I'm about
Then-
that's a horrible idea.
You see this, now
Right.
there's this huge house in Beijing with lots of fancy furniture. What do you do now? You also want to buy a house. But what kind of house? A bigger house, right? And then what do? You also post pictures, okay? Then how do other people feel? You think this is funny, okay? But this happens all the time. So very quickly, what happens in the school? And you all spend your money, and you all go into debt, right? Because you're in competition with each other to buy the biggest thing. And $1 million is a lot of money, but it's not enough to buy everything, right? So you go into debt. You borrow more money to buy more things. And then what happens? And then what happens? How do you guys feel about each other? Do you guys have lunch together? Do you guys have dinner together? Do you guys like to share homework together? You guys hate each other, right? At the end of the day, what will happen is you all go into debt and you all hate each other, right? So that's consumerism. This is what consumerism is. Consumerism creates a competition in society for prestige, okay?
So he's basically getting at creating regular individualism within a society via capitalism. Basically what he's getting at in this point. That's why he's talking about the competition aspect of capitalism. So we went through the example of the students buying the house, posting it on social media, so somebody would get jealous and, okay, well, I have $1 million too, so I have to buy a bigger and better house and then post mine. And then it creates more people trying to outdo each other, more of the individualistic mentality versus how he said earlier, he believes that the communism or the more the communal society or the society where the worker was the center of it, bred a more of a equal society or more of a group-minded society versus the individual-minded or regular individual society today since the 80s. But come on, man, like it's not 80s news. So
He's oversimplifying the hell out of this.
Yeah,
And he's also
lost me.
Yeah, so what he did was he had a script. This wasn't a lesson. He had a script, because if you're really asking those questions, you'll allow the students to give you real answers. You won't sit there and direct the conversation or guide the conversation, but that's neither here nor there.
No, that's here and there.
Right. Right. So what I got from just listening to this, and it was all over the place, to be honest with you. Okay, his concept is the competition, the one-ups. We want to be the one-ups, we want to stunt on this one, this, that, and the other. Then there is an aspect of society that is geared toward that, but I just don't think that. I don't think that. I mean, based on the timeline, this started way before he's talking about. Even Black Wall Street, you had black people bragging about their houses and the way they lived, accustomed to the way they used to live, and how they would have cars on the block and they would own this and that business. And these were seen as status, signs of status in society. And the whole concept of actually selling and marketing the consumer concept, that was because people no longer had to work just for the purpose of utility and maintaining the household. So like the time frames that he's speaking to, and when you throw into the fact that the vast population boom, because they still wanted to create a society of the haves and have-nots. That's always been part of the plan.
Yeah, it's already been created though.
Right. So that's why you see it. You've seen for the last 40 years as the shrinking middle class. There's been a conversation in economic circles for the longest. And then the separation.
Right.
The super wealth, the wealthy and the, and all these people out here protesting for livable wages.
Right. But for us, that separation, that wage gap has always been there. And like you're saying, there's levels to this because he's looking at this consumer economy and this consumer mindset, or the shift to this consumer economy or the consumer population through the lens of like just general white America, and not taking through the lens of America as a whole. Because, and I'm gonna just say it now, he's saying capitalism is the perfection of slavery. I'm gonna say mental enslavement, because we're talking about social engineering and mindsets, right? Things being put on autopilot for people to behave in a specific manner that will benefit the dominant system in place, right? And so that's what he's really getting at, people being socially engineered through economics or through capitalism. But I would say, and I could be wrong, but I would say social engine or mental enslavement is the apex of slavery, and capitalism and the consumer economy or consumer populace is a outcome of that. It's a byproduct of the mental conditioning or the mental enslavement, because a group of people have to be mentally enslaved in order for you to shift their whole mindset like that.
Well, I don't even think he's talking about humans anymore. Like, I don't.
Sorry about that. That was my computer. My computer belched. Sorry.
Because I'm like, I don't. All right, bro. One, there's and I'm not. So American humans, and I'm not even going to use the anecdotal evidence of myself, because I bought a house and I ain't post a picture no goddamn where. So, when the argument could be made that there are lots of people. Now, he did say, what happens if you give, well, we're talking about giving a bunch of young people $1 million. They will buy a house and they will post it. Okay, cool. That's fair. Mm-hmm. But if we're going to do that thought experiment like that, and you're trying to use it as a basis of understanding the way that the collective society would maneuver given a specific circumstance, then you can't divorce causality from the equation. Where did they get the million? Where does the $1 million come from? Because that impacts what people are going to do with it.
Right.
If everybody in your class got $1 million because all of their families was just wiped out in the terror event.
Well, but also another layer that I'm thinking about, if you talk about Reaganomics in the Reagan era, in this stimulation of the economy, just everything that would come from Ronald Reagan, looking at the Contra situations and everything, and thinking about consumerism, still going on what he's talking about, consumerism. Well, a lot of black people, a good number of black people in the 80s were able to become better consumers, I would say. They were able to consume more because of the drug trade, because of crack being introduced into the community. So you have people, young men and some young women who historically would not have had access to that much money, that much disposable income to even stimulate an economy or in a country that's still oppressing them.
Well, his worldview is just different from mine. He views consumerism as the creator of competition, and I view competition as the creator of consumerism. Like, competition has always been there, is going to always be.
Right, in humanity.
Right, like that's a natural part. It's part of our survival instincts. Right. Because the way we think, aversion to fear, aversion to risk, aversion to all of the negative experiences. If you have more, I have less. That means I'm at risk. There's a lot of basic fundamental human behavioral things happening right now, which is why I say the human being as a biological entity doesn't have the structures and supports in place culturally or cognitively to deal with the level of technology and resources we have access to right now. The problem we're having here is not a is it is a systemic issue, but it's only a systemic issue insofar as humans are not properly equipped to deal with the systems that we have created.
Right.
So
Yeah,
a
the
lot
systems
of
are more advanced than our educations.
right, the systems they're more advanced in our cultural programming. They're
Yeah.
more advanced in our biological programming. This is the fundamental problem we're having. All of these people that say capitalism is bad and we need to be protected from predatory loans are the same people who, and this is an extreme example, but I'm using it this way for a reason. Everybody that says that capitalism is bad and we need to be protected from these horrible loans because people can't be held to be responsible for their decisions are the same people that would say that women should be free to get abortions because it's their body, their choice. And who are you to tell them that they can't like you? So on the one hand, so on the one hand, we're too stupid to understand finances. But on the other hand, we're mature enough that we should be able to make these other critical decisions. Like, you can't do this. You got to figure out a baseline for what's acceptable human behavior in terms of the cultural and cognitive programming we're putting in place. If we need to baby-proof the world financially, we need to baby-proof the world, period. We idiot-proof the world all the way around.
It needs to be. It does need to be, because we're getting at, basically, as we're digging, we're getting at a fundamental lapse in the educational system as well. Where he at in the classroom? I mean, in order for a society to fall into these ideas, we're talking about them being controlled in a way, or them being even programmed. So we're talking about being programmed in school. You go to class, your parents are programming you. You've been programmed in school. Hey, go get a good job so you can make money. Go get a good job so you can make money. Go get a good job so you can make money. Go get a good job. So you're talking about societal, like you were saying, echoing what you're saying, societal programming as a whole, but it's also being reinforced within the educational system that is not equipped and don't have an abundance of people who are equipped to prepare the students for the world that they're actually going to be living in, this technologically sound world, because even those instructors are not ready for this world. That makes people easier to fall for the mental programming. That makes people easy to be programmed, period. Here we are. The Idiocracy the movie Idiocracy was actually a documentary.
Well, I'm looking at the fact this guy, now he put this up 7 days ago, and 54 was it 751,000 views and 56,000 likes. This is what you talk about when we say how dangerous influences could be. So okay, and I'm gonna skip to the end because I think we pretty much have I think we've rattled this cage enough in terms of addressing the what's wrong with his delivery and how it's out of sync with what the reality was. But just to go one step further, let's go to the consumerism concepts within our community. We do have people who spend money that they can't really afford to spend. We do have people who are overwhelmingly trying to buy products. So you'll see the pictures of people. So it won't be nobody with a house, but it'll be somebody with a Gucci belt on. It won't be nobody with a house, but it'll be somebody standing in line for the next pair of Jordans or the next pair of LeBrons. It won't be it might be a house, but now we're talking about people with 700-inch screen TVs or something of that nature, or they're pulling up in there or shit. Most people, a sign of status for us was always taking a picture outside your car if your car was nice or brand new. So there is that, but we don't look at the causality of that. And the majority of that is most people in our society, economically speaking, are not doing well.
Right.
So this is sometimes a coping mechanism. Is not a healthy one, but a coping mechanism to that is I can't afford the good life, but I just want to have this for 5 minutes. I want to be able to have a taste of the good life. I can't live this lifestyle, but I want to
Right.
experience this moment. And so, like I said, it's not healthy. It's not a healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
But we do see that. But let's get to the actual causality of it. This is structurally created in terms of, when you have a people that's been demoralized, such as Black people, then you create a commercialized system that, where you stare and direct all the advertisement toward them, which is really psychological warfare. When you
Right.
do all those different things to a group and you tell them, listen, to get out of the shitty way we've been treating you all your life, all you got to do is step into this car. All you got to do is buy this mink coat. You have to, you can, it can be yours. You know what I'm saying? That's why you have people bragging about taking trips all over the place. But when they get there and they can't afford the meal, they try to dip and dodge the waiter.
And see, with that, that's why I understand where he's coming from. Like I get his point. We don't agree with everything because of course it's missing the context. A lot of context that will go into American history because of what actually happened to America, i.e. Black people in America. But the idea of me buying this will help me elevate my status. Me buying this will free me. Me continuously feeding this system, this capitalist system that I talk about and I don't like, that I'm against, but I'm for my own individual enrichment. It's kind of like that's what he's getting at. It's like I'm going to spend this to make myself feel better. But the larger part is, for Black Americans, it's a whole lot deeper than his group or the white group or other groups. It's a whole lot deeper. Like consumerism is not the perfection of slavery for us, in my opinion. Mental enslavement, period. The chains that are left on our brain that leaves us in autopilot. Like Dr. Renuka Rashidi said, if white people disappeared today, the system of white supremacy would still continue. Well, why is that? That's because the programming that we've received. So it would be different for us than it would be for the other groups in America. Yes, they may be driven by consumerism, but no, we're driven by straight mental enslavement, the programming, the nigger programming that we've been given over 400, 500 years. And think about it, we've been baking in this programming over 400 years. It's different.
Well, and my thing is this, right? Because it is different, but that's not even my disagreement. My disagreement with him is it's human.
See, his problem is he got like 3 different disagreements from us. But yeah, you're right though. Like,
Not because humans compete. And if I can't compete with you, and this is why I say I understand and I agree with y'all, I do think there's a cultural component to it because Black cultures and cultures that develop in where there was abundance in various other resources, they develop other ways to measure worth.
right.
And so in the Black cultures that, a lot of us descend from, food wasn't necessarily scarce. And all of these other things. So your measure came from your status within the community in terms of maybe appearance, in terms of other sorts of resources. So in the Black community, you move forward where, well, if everybody's broke and don't nobody got nothing, you measure status by the appearance. You measure status by these other tools. So we're still competing. We're still gauging each other. We're just doing it differently because we don't have $1 million to do it with. If all we got is, if everybody in the hood got $20, well, we got to have a hierarchy somewhere. All right, well, he got the new J's. All right, well, he at the top. Now we can have an argument about why we choose to prioritize the new J's and put that at the top. But that's a separate conversation from the valuation claim that this guy is presenting.
Well,
in my opinion.
And to hammer home what you're saying about just like competition is human. I mean, let's go back to the early days of human, the early days of humanoids and humankind. Like, it's a reason why Homo sapiens sapien is the one that outlasted others. Like these other groups of humans encountered each other, and they had to fight for resources. Somebody won, somebody didn't. Competition from the beginning. So that's a good point right there. So great. It's only like 4 minutes. You can go ahead and get your point.
No. Go.
It's only like 4 minutes left, and you're gonna let them finish up. Then we can.
I want him to land this plane.
Yeah, let's do it.
To see who can post the nicest social media pictures. This leads to the individualization or the optimization of you, okay? In other words, you are now unable to act together. You don't want to organize. You don't want to act in solidarity, okay? And ultimately, this means that you develop economic logic, okay? And what is economic logic? It's to see the world only through the lens of capital.
Basically, and pertaining to us, it's like what we're always talking about: a black person looking to find that comfortable place in white supremacy, not being willing to give up that comfortable place within white supremacy. That economic logic that applies to us.
Okay, does it make sense? So when you see someone, and you're like, okay, well, do I want to date this person? You don't ask, oh, is this person a nice person? You ask yourself, how much money does this person have? Okay, you understand? You use economic logic in order to understand the world and to reason and analyze the world, okay? Now, let me ask you this question. Today, is this how China works? Is this how the world works? The answer is yes, okay? Are you like this? Yes, you are like this, okay? You've been brainwashed into thinking that this is the only way to behave and to think. You're in school. Why are you in school? So you can get a good job. Why? To make money. And so you can buy things, okay? You understand? That's how you all think. But there are different ways to think about school, right? You're like, I'm in school to learn, to open my mind, to have an imagination, to think critically about the world, right? And that was the way we thought about school when the workers were dominant. But now that consumers are dominant, all we think about is, how do I get a good job? How do I buy a...
I know you want to let it... We can't slide by that.
Speak your piece. Speak your piece.
I almost spit out my yak.
Like, all right, bro. Like, the more he talked, the more I'm like, all right.
Which piece? Which piece are you talking about?
Well, like, there are other ways to think about school. I'm in school to critically think. I'm in school to develop my mind. I'm in school. So, like, there's a whole context missing there. Why are you in school in America spending $50,000 a year in some cases to think critically?
You're
like,
not.
No. And so he says back in the 80s, this is how we thought of school. Well, yeah, back in the 80s, school was like you can get a whole bachelor's degree for like $5,000.
Yeah, everything was cheaper.
That changes the context of that situation. Changes now. School, it better be an investment because you got a mortgage when you finish.
Right.
So that's a whole different. Like, these kids coming into school now, they coming in to get I think that that's the way they should be coming into school? Absolutely not. But I understand what financial situations do to people. If I'm spending $20,000-$30,000 a year for 4 years studying something, and I'm graduating with $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in debt, I need to make something on the back end.
But I think that goes to what you were talking about earlier in the show of his view, his blinded or his slanted view on this, because we're going to college to get a good job. Like, we trying to change our lives, like us black folk, like especially low income black folk. Like college, me going to college and getting a good job could change the fate of my family. Like, do I want to learn how to think? Yeah, but at the end of the day, I can learn how to think critically all I want. But if I can't bring home the bacon, it don't matter. So it's gonna be different. And if you're going to be a college professor and you're going to be teaching this, in my opinion, no shots, but I do think that you got to look at the bigger picture, though. You have to look at the bigger picture of this, because you have to give the full breadth of it. You have to let the students really understand, like, America as a whole, not just a sector of America who could pay for college or who could afford to go to school just for the critical thinking. You have to be privileged to go to school to just critically think. You have to be privileged to go to school. You have to be privileged to go to college, period. Like everybody, most Americans don't go to college.
Well, I think also, you know, context is, how are you prepared prior to going to college? Like, what is the mental preparation? What are the counselors doing? Do you actually have counselors that are actually informing you of the process and giving you the whole overlook on the reasons you should be attaining college? And depending on your situation, college might be a way out of an abusive family home. College might be an escape from a city that you just don't see a future in. Excuse me. So, and me, when I went to college, I looked at it at first when I first got there, like, yeah, I'm coming to college because I'm going to major in business and I'm going to, you know, I'm trying to make this money. And then the culture of college sort of changes that over time for a lot of people. And culturally speaking, I said, I won't do well on any of this unless I follow something that's, you know, that I'm passionate about. And I've always been passionate about teaching. And I've always been passionate about history. But in doing so, I realized that this is not going to be a profession that's going to make me rich. Now, fortunately, I did go to college in the 90s. So it wasn't an arm and a leg to go to college. You know, you could buy a used car for when I went to school with what I had to pay. And then on top of that, when I went to when I got my master's degree, I didn't have to pay a dime for it. So, and I knew that's the only way I was going to go back to school, is if I didn't have to pay for it. Because, so, but even still, right? He's trying to cover too much ground, and he's missing a lot of things, and he's misconstruing a lot of things, and trying to drive home a point. This could be a very effective lesson if he actually. So I know he tried to squeeze this into the little 15-minute blurb that we got here, but this is a 3-hour lesson at least.
Well,
just to even get to this point.
Well, especially if you're going to say that consumerism is the perfection of slavery to a group of people who've been enslaved, like literally physically enslaved.
Well, see, and I think that's where the Black American experience is different than all other experiences, is because we're pretty much the only people in the world who really have a history that we can actually remember that. And it's embedded into our culture, you know, so we can feel that. We see the dragnet that slavery has put upon the rest of our culture, and so we understand the impacts that it had for us more so than somebody who's just looking at this from afar and can't conceptualize this, because China was never really enslaved. China was just colonialized a million times. And so, and I think that's where he's from, you know, China, but it's impossible to merge those concepts if you don't really have a true understanding. Like, he really needs to take a Black Studies course or two to teach this lesson, to be more effective with it. But the lesson can be taught to an affluent class of white folk, because this is their way of interpreting the history too.
Right. Right.
And I
And
think, when you look in this don't look like he's teaching at an HBCU.
it's social justice warrior history.
All
So
right, say that again.
this is social justice warrior history, and these are the people who learn stuff like this and then go on social media and start repeating this and not necessarily really understanding what they're saying. They're getting obliterated.
This is how you create a radicalized 19-year-old communist.
Right.
Because they see him as an authority figure, a figure in authority.
What you're talking about. So
and then he's only going to guide them to resources going to back what he says, or that's going to actually give validation of what he says. So this is how you create that, and this is the power. This is one of the reasons why you do have the, I'm not even gonna call them misunderstandings at this point, but you do have those people. You think about it, like, how can a 13-year-old be a feminist when she hasn't really experienced a lot of things that most feminists complain about? How can you create a social justice warrior and they've been in an affluent community their entire life? But this is see, we talk about the higher powers. This is social engineering right here.
Because
going back to what I was saying earlier about the school setting, helping to aid in the social engineering. But that's why I say mental enslavement is, if we're gonna talk about the apex of slavery, it'd be mental enslavement. I've literally taken the physical chains off of you, and you still behave the same way generations later.
Well, that's why I always, when I talk about it, I say the true slavery started the day the shackles came off. Before then, everybody was prisoners of war or prisoners held against their will. When you took the shackles off, that's when it became slave. That's really when it became slavery, because when you have to depend on a class that had been oppressive to you your entire existence in this particular part of the world, and then you still have to depend on them for labor, resources, and access to wealth, access to education, and so forth. You literally put your children. I mean, the mindset is those people did harm to us. Why would I give them our babies, our most precious resource? We feed our children to them every day, and so that just speaks to the mental. I'm just agreeing with you, Joe. That speaks to the mental slavery that we've been locked into. That have been our sort of our genetic memory has been reprogrammed to operate in a certain way in which it does this thing. So so just like, not just because I know it's hard and Pat's real technical. So it's kind of hard to get through his bullshit to see like how we can use this to
I'm sorry, I'm gonna mute myself.
No, it's cool, man. It's cool. Good. But because I'm glad you pointed it out, because I don't want people to think we just skirted by what he did or what he's trying to do and his inability to do so. This man's probably tenured for all we know, so he's not even in jeopardy of losing his job or having somebody pull him into the office to change his methods. But but in terms of like the concepts that affect our community mostly, the underlying things are we're victims of circumstance, but at the same time, we're the only ones that are going to be equipped to rescue ourselves from these circumstances. And if we can't rescue ourselves from these circumstances, then we'll be damned to die by these circumstances. Yep. So the whole notion of the fact that, like, y'all know that I had to deal with helping people pick their lives back up and tried to recently due to a tragic situation that happened here in Philly. But you looked at it, and I look at something that we don't like talking about. It's cool now while it's a front page story, but when the limited amount of resources that are allocated for a particular crisis run out, those people still have to pick up the pieces for the rest of the rest of their lives. And because we are not equipped as a community to even think far enough ahead to put provisions in place so that we ourselves can be the ones that are the buffering that provide the safety net for our community, we're often at the mercy of organizations like the Red Cross, hoping that there'll be some government relief to help us out of our situations. Now, we're not the only ones that go through this, but we know we're going to be the last ones that actually have access to this, or they're going to make available to us. I mean, look at what they did in Hurricane Katrina, where all those people got jerked out of their insurance policies because they said, well, it wasn't a storm, it was the water damage. Well, where the fuck did the water come from? You know, so, and those people lost their houses and they had to move on. Some people had to move to other cities. And that whole ward, I think it was the 4th ward, the whole ward was devastated. They called the people who are surviving after actually walking through 5 and 6 feet of water. They called them refugees. How the hell are you gonna call American citizens refugees? You know, these are citizens in your country. How you gonna call them refugees? You know, so the whole notion that anybody that would refer to you in this day and time as a refugee would be the ones that you depend on in case of an emergency is one of the reasons why that if we understood and were willing, because that's another thing, we have to be willing to trust each other, to be trustworthy. One of the things we talked about, you know, and when we talked about the PAC's
Codes of conduct.
Codes of conduct. We have to be trusting and trustworthy to be able to build those things within ourselves,
right,
as a people, to where we don't that we become our own insulation against any of the societal things that might happen for which we've been consistently victimized of. You know, or we fall into those positions. We have to be that. And that means that we go back to something that an overwhelming theme we've been talking about for the longest, where we have to be willing to sacrifice. But that means we can't be out there trying to buy a Mercedes Benz or a Lexus or whatever new car comes off the lot, even though we can barely afford to do that and pay our bills. And then we go into credit card debt because we're trying to maintain that lifestyle instead of living comfortably, living responsibly in a good, affordable car that's reliable, because luxury and reliable are two different things, but reliability goes a lot further than luxury, because you break an axle on a Toyota, it's going to cost you a lot less than if you break an axle on a higher end car, you know. So we have to figure out that and put our fragile egos, and this is the community. I ain't even gendering this one. This is the entire community. I don't want to hear about the ice. If you're talking about metals, I want to hear about the precious metals. I don't want to hear about, bragging about I just got this and I just got that. No, if you can't afford that, but you got that just to tell me you got that, but you can't afford that, somehow you're one calamity away from losing all of that.
Well,
so are you going to brag to me about moving back into your mother's house and sleeping on the couch the same way you're using these things that you could barely stay afloat for in this economy that we're extremely unconscious about? That's why I speak so much on the dating culture and the notion that somebody should spend the ridiculous notion that somebody should overspend for a first date on something when the economy is falling around us. People with this same education have been booted out of their positions. The jobs that they had will no longer exist. We have to get serious about this, and this goes back to, the arrested development we always talk about in terms of our people. Because when you truly get down to it, the adults take care of the responsibility of their homes. The children placate and desire all the fancy and shiny gifts and toys that's going to be under the Christmas tree every December 25th. We got to determine which one we're going to be and stick to it.
Right. But you also, as you're talking, you also made me think, going on what he's talking about. So if we go with the premise that consumerism, like people have been enslaved through the lens of, or through the mindset of consumerism, well, black people have been, and just for this, because we know it's more layers to it, so don't be like, we more than that, it's more layers to it, but black people have been double enslaved and through mental enslavement and through consumerism enslavement. If we're going off one of his premises, but if we add the full breadth of the picture into it, okay, but also not all black people who have access to capital. Of course, we know the elite, which will help further separate themselves from the regular black people, which will further help to, I guess, hammer home the original conditioning. So the consumerism is doing nothing but just helping to reinforce the original Willie Lynchism.
Well, we got to eliminate the peacocking culture that exists.
Right.
That has got to stop being, because I even remember making a comment about this on Facebook. Somebody shared it and a brother jumped on their particular page, not mine, but responded to the comment and said, well, you know, but this is why people need to speak for themselves, because we're all not struggling out here. Negro, if you're not struggling, then the post don't apply to you. You know what I'm saying? The post only applies to the people who can't afford to do the things that they're asked and pressured into doing, and then going out of their way to do it. So some of these cats are spending a half a damn paycheck on a date with bills still to pay. You got, listen, during All-Star break every year, All-Star break, the Super Bowl, whenever there's some type of a gathering where there's going to be a social attachment to it, what do you see? You see women that are begging people for GoFundMe so that they can come home because they didn't spend enough money, but they didn't have enough money for the trips they went on. You have a brother that was stuck in another country a couple years ago because he could not afford a plane ticket home. You know, and that was just, I know there are more situations than those, but those are just the isolated ones that went viral on social media.
Yeah.
Our priorities are skewed in that regard.
Right.
And it needs to be fixed. If I got a bill to pay, but I got to choose between that and seeing and being a part of the beehive will lose every day of the week and twice on Sundays. But there's some people who say, no, I got to find a way to make it happen. They'll get a payday loan and then be paying for that concert for the next 3 to 4 months if they have actually paid the loan off.
You make me think of something else. The idea that I have to keep up with the map, I have to keep up with Mouse Up. We have to keep up with the Joneses. We have to get what white folk got. We have to have what white folk have. That mindset has already been embedded in us when they made us niggas. So we're talking about like years and years and years of this festering within our psyches over generations and generations. And then he just talking about the 80s. So you clearly not talking about us. You clearly not talking about America as a whole. You're clearly talking about a sector of America that have pretty much existed in a certain tax bracket. And so you're missing a lot. So you're not really helping.
Yeah. So
but
is it more to go or
yeah, it's just about 3 minutes. I just want to finish for the viewers so they can see the end of it, and then we close this out. So
we can let Pat tear his ass up after that.
Yeah.
Bigger house. Because I want to post it on social media. Okay? So if you think about this, what this really is the perfection of slavery. Okay? Does it make sense? What does this phrase mean? The perfection of slavery. Yeah, you become a slave of the money, but what? Why is this perfect? Yes, okay? You understand? If you're a slave, you rebel, right? But if you don't know you're a slave, and you like this, you choose this, then you will never rebel, okay? So the consumerism is the perfection of slavery, okay? And that's why Francis Fukuyama thinks that consumerism is the end of history, because it is a system that achieves what the elites want, and the masses are unwilling and unable to protest and rebel. Okay, does that make sense? It's a perfect system.
So that's the end of that. Yeah. Yeah, but once again, that's why I've been saying what I've been saying, how I've been saying what I'm saying after watching this this will be my 5th time watching this. I hear you, buddy, and I get some of the concepts that you're saying, and some of it applies, but I still think it's outcomes of overall conditioning, especially for us in America. But for you to talk about that only happening in the 80s and moving forward, like consumerism wasn't a thing in America, like social engineering, even in that realm wasn't something in America before the 1980s.
I mean, I disagree with him and Francis Fukuyama.
And his name is Professor Jiang, Jian, and it's the YouTube Professor Jiang clips.
And that ain't no disrespect to Fukuyama. I'm familiar with him, not intimately, but I've heard the name before and I've looked up some of the stuff. But in this particular case, if this is one of the core tenets of what Francis Fukuyama espouses, then I disagree with that too. Like, consumerism. All right, so this is a whole nother show that we get into later. Yeah. But to Buddy's point, he never even defined what a slave was. Because an argument can be made that if I am living in a state that I'm content with, that I'm happy with, where I feel like all my needs are met, and I feel like I'm able to do the things that I want to do, is my slavery a problem to me or to you?
Right, because you're going to have to convince me. You're going to have to convince me I'm a slave, which goes back to more so my point. So yeah, but I'm just like, all right. So if this is the logic we're going to take, and this is the logic that I take even with black nationalism, I don't argue with people that want to stay where they want to stay. Let them stay there. You know, like, so it's the same. Like, even with the Harriet Tubman quote, I love the quote and I've used it, but my real feelings on the quote, I would have freed more if they knew they were slaves. No, you freed the slaves. The people you didn't free weren't slaves. They were willing participants. They were happy there. They didn't want to go. If you are content in slavery, it is not my job to convince you're a slave, because your slavery is not a problem to you. And so why is it a problem to me? Is it even slavery? I get it's slavery from my perspective, but if you don't see yourself as a slave, then you're not a slave. That's how that works for me. A place within the system of white supremacy that fits you.
Right, because everybody looks weird to everybody else. Somebody could look at a millionaire. I've heard people do it. They look at these millionaire kids and they say they're slaves to their image. They're slaves to their parents, blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, well, damn. To be a $400 million slave. I mean, right now I'm a slave for far, far, far less than that. So, like, and if you want to, like, you got to define these terms, because when you leave them ambiguous, they mean everything and nothing at the same time. What do you mean when you say that consumerism? Define that. Slavery, define that. End stage, yeah, you got to define that too, buddy. So I disagree with him. I don't think consumerism a problem? Yes. Consumerism is a problem, but consumerism, in my opinion, is only a problem insofar as we don't have the cultural, structural, or systemic tools necessary to help people fight against their baser instincts. There are no structures in place that encourage people to delay gratification. There are no structures in place that encourage people to feel comfortable with who they are, what they've achieved, and where they are in life. And so by virtue of that, humans establish their own status based on how they compare to other humans. That is a human thing. Competition. So I think that's the core of my disagreement. He believes that consumerism creates competition. I believe competition creates consumerism. Competition is a natural part of the human existence. It's going to remain a natural part of the human existence until we develop a culture that protects us from the extreme examples, manifestations, and expressions of consumerism. And I also do find it interesting that, and I know Francis Fukuyama was born in America, but he's still an Asian American. I find that interesting. That's all I'm saying.
Hey,
it's slanted. That's all.
I get you. All I know is I'm wearing a blazer next week. Damn what you talking about. I'm playing the blazer next week. I'm trying to be live out here, get my views up. So I'm wearing me a blazer next week. Because PCI.
You gotta get you an OTSOG blazer, man.
I do. That's a good idea. I do need.
Put the strong man right there on the shoulder or something.
Hey, look, man. I just didn't want to be on here with a white T-shirt.
That's all good, B. It's all good, B. It's all good, B. You just inspire
the blazer and the beads and stuff.
Yeah, I like the
blazer. Are those red, black, and green beads? Hold on.
Oh, they're not. Well.
So you
not
look like you
black
can go
and green, but this more like a smoky gray and ruby sort of thing. You know, I got this actually at a Juneteenth event. Brother was selling these at his table. So, oh shit.
You gonna go get a blazer rat now? I know. Next week we blazering it up next week. All right.
I look like a New Yorker too. Got the blazer with the hoodie on top of it.
See, look like he teaching class. You look like you finna attend it.
You feel me? What is we doing? Hold on. And I got the red, black, and green on.
Oh, she's a cat.
Scully.
You got the menu ready now.
Red, black, and green, baby.
You heard me say we getting out. So that's how I go.
Hey, stepping into it.
Right. But those are our thoughts on this conversation. Of course, we could get a whole lot deeper. That possibly could be a part 2 of this. And if you all want us to kind of go further and deeper in this, well, you already know what to do. Get into the comments and let us know that you do want part 2. You want to further this conversation. And of course, we run it back and we continue digging this hole here and bringing some understanding of what's going on. So, with that being said, FetLifeStation.com, you already know what it is. You got 2 favorite stops: this channel and FetLifeStation.com. You need these 2 things in your life if you're trying to be right, you're trying to get your mind right. You also need your favorite website, which is thepacks.org. Check it out. Packed full of information.
Joe think he's slick. Every time he say that, he look over at my nameplate to remember the name.
I'm used to the old one. It's cheered in my head. And I can't
think he's slick. You ain't slick. We see your eyeballs.
Well, it's the www.dpacks. Yeah, Dpacks Inc. That's seared in my head, man. So I'll be trying not to say that one. But yeah, Pat with the call out. Yeah.
In the words of the great Lil Tucci, where my eyes at? Probably on her thigh tap. Bars.
Yeah. There you go. On the Hey man, Lil Wayne is a literary giant, my brother. Yeah. OnShoulders1.com. Make sure y'all check it out. Support what we got going on. Thank you to everybody. I want to give a big shout out to Mr. Kenneth Wanamaker. I've been checking out your YouTube channel and your videos. Good content. So make sure you all let me find it real quick so we can bring up.
He shouted you out.
I don't know, but I'm gonna shout him out anyway. That's the type of black man I am, bro. You know how
Oh,
we
I
do it.
get you. Nah, yeah. Black men support black men. I feel you.
That's our code of conduct, Pat. What you talking about?
Yeah. BMSBM.
So the YouTube channel is Runaway Slave 2.0. So make sure you check it out. Runaway Slave 2.0.
Nah, that's dangerous, Joe. She talking about runaway slave, runaway consumerism. What is she?
Somebody got to run. Somebody got to be out here running, bro. You don't want. You see, your problem is you don't want to run no more, bro.
Nah, I don't like chasing or being chased. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm out here in these streets single. You feel me? You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, bro.
Yeah, man. Michael Anthony Clark Jr., thank you once again for your contributions and everything.
That dude got an important person name. Michael Anthony Clark Jr.
Great man. So
He didn't wrote a book or something.
I appreciate the support and everybody who will support the channel, the continued support. Thank you. And let's continue to build, get these views up, and we're gonna get our blazers on. So
what about another name? We ain't got no more names?
Well, always Meek Him. Always Meek Him.
Yeah, always Meek Him. But everybody Meek Him out.
Yeah.
My people out in France.
Him.
But we out of here. Y'all enjoy yourselves. Happy Friday and do what you do. See y'all later.